At midnight, the silence of our house was broken by his phone. I answered before he could stop me, and when I heard her voice whisper, "Put him back on," I knew my marriage wasn't what I thought it was. Those 4 words cut through me sharper than any fight we had ever had, because they didn't sound like a stranger. They sounded like someone who belonged. My hand froze, my breath caught, and before I could react, he snatched the phone away, muttering about spam calls, avoiding my eyes completely. But spam doesn't whisper in the middle of the night. Spam doesn't sound comfortable, familiar, like it has done this before. I didn't argue. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling while the glow of the screen faded, my chest tightening with the weight of what I had just heard. That was the moment something cracked. But maybe I should tell you who I am, because without knowing the life I thought I had built, you won't understand how quickly one whisper can break it. My name is Sarah. I'm 38 years old. For 15 years, I thought I had a steady marriage with Mark, my husband, the man I met in college when we were just kids with big dreams. We live in a quiet suburb in Ohio, nothing flashy but comfortable, with a 2-story home we saved for, a backyard where our daughter learned to ride her bike, and neighbors who wave when we mow the lawn. I work in HR at a mid-sized company, steady hours, nothing glamorous. Mark works in sales, the kind of job that always seems to demand late nights, dinners with clients, weekends where networking is the excuse. We weren't rich, but we had enough, and in my mind that meant we had everything. I poured my heart into this life. I gave up finishing my degree so he could take a job in another city early on. I put my career second when our daughter was born so he could focus on climbing the ladder. I believed we were a team, and for years I thought that sacrifice was worth it. We had our routines, me making coffee every morning in the same chipped mug I've had for a decade, him rushing out the door with his tie half knotted, our daughter rolling her eyes when he made the same dumb joke about being late again. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Or so I thought. Looking back now, I see the small cracks. The missed calls he dismissed as wrong numbers. The perfume I smelled on his jacket once, faint but foreign. The receipts he tucked into his wallet that didn't add up to just clients. I brushed them aside. I trusted him. When you spend 15 years with someone, you don't want to believe they're lying. You tell yourself you're imagining things. And that night, lying next to him after that call, I told myself maybe it really was nothing. Maybe I was overreacting, but the truth is I felt it. The shift. The distance that had been creeping in slowly, now screaming at me in the form of a stranger's whisper. I remember the way he tried too hard the next morning, pouring coffee for me before I even got out of bed, humming like he was relaxed, asking too many questions about my day with this exaggerated cheer in his voice. That was always his tell. When Mark lied, he became overly helpful, like he thought he could scrub away guilt by wiping the counter or taking out the trash before the bag was even full. I watched him put on his old college t-shirt, the one with the faded letters, and kiss me on the cheek with the kind of distant politeness you'd give to a neighbor's kid at a barbecue. And all I could hear in my head was her voice. Put him back on. I carried it with me the entire day, through every email I answered, every errand I ran. I stared at the chipped paint on my office desk, the hum of the computer fan loud in the silence, and wondered, who was she? How long had she been calling at midnight? How many times had he picked up before I noticed? It was just 4 words, but they echoed like a secret anthem of betrayal. I didn't have proof yet, but I had suspicion. And suspicion, once planted, doesn't die quietly. It grows. That night I watched him closer. The way his eyes flicked toward his phone every time it buzzed. The way he placed it face down, screen hidden, something he hadn't done before. I pretended not to care, but inside I was cataloging every movement, every slip, every crack in his story. And I told myself one thing: the next time that phone rang, I would be ready. Because that whisper at midnight wasn't just a mistake. It was the beginning of the truth unraveling. The days after that midnight call felt like living inside a riddle I couldn't solve, but couldn't stop turning over in my head. Mark went on like nothing had happened, kissing my cheek, heading out the door, tossing a quick "love you" behind him, as if that alone could glue my world back together. But once you hear a stranger whisper for your husband in the middle of the night, you don't go back to sleep. Not really. Every little thing became a clue. His phone, once left casually on the counter or the nightstand, was now glued to his hand like an extra limb. He started taking it with him to the bathroom, to the garage, even out to the mailbox, which he never used to care about. He became quieter too, distracted. Sometimes I'd ask a question, and he'd answer a beat too late, like he'd just come back from somewhere else in his mind. And that somewhere wasn't here. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, but the human heart doesn't work like a courtroom. It doesn't wait for hard evidence. It bleeds at suspicion. One evening, while folding laundry, I found a receipt stuffed into his jeans pocket. It was from a restaurant downtown, the kind of place we'd only been to twice because it was too expensive. 2 entrees, 2 desserts, a bottle of wine. The date was the same night he told me he was working late. I stared at that slip of paper until the numbers blurred. When he came home, I asked him straight out, "How was work?" He smiled easily. "Long night, client dinner." I held the receipt in my palm but didn't show him. Not yet. Instead, I nodded and said, "Must have been important." He kissed the top of my head and went upstairs. And I thought, important enough to sign with a little heart in the tip line? Because yes, he had. A tiny heart. I shoved the paper deep into my drawer like hiding it would calm the storm inside me, but of course it didn't. It just waited there, humming. The next few nights were worse. He came home smelling of cologne I didn't recognize, something musky, too strong, not the faint citrus he always wore. Once I leaned close, pretending to hug him, and the scent hit me so hard I nearly pulled back. "New cologne?" I asked lightly. He blinked, too fast. "Yeah, sample from work. Don't like it much." I forced a laugh, but inside every nerve in me was screaming. He thought he was slick, but after 15 years I knew his tells. I started watching more closely. His shirts freshly pressed when he usually didn't care. His hair styled on days he claimed he was buried in spreadsheets. He even started working out again after years of ignoring the treadmill in the basement. To anyone else, those might look like harmless changes. To me, they spelled something else, someone new. And yet, I stayed quiet. Maybe you wonder why. Why not confront him? Why not scream? Why not demand the truth right then? Because sometimes the fear of knowing is worse than the lie itself. I wasn't ready for my marriage to implode. Not yet. But silence is its own kind of poison. It seeps into every room, every meal, every bedtime routine. Our daughter noticed first. "Why are you so quiet, Mom?" she asked one night at dinner. Mark looked up sharply, waiting for my answer. I forced a smile. "Just tired." She frowned, sensing the lie. Kids always do. That night, lying awake beside him, I thought about that call again, about her voice. She sounded so calm, so certain. Like this wasn't the first time she had reached out to him. How many times had they spoken at midnight while I slept? How many whispered words had passed between them that I would never hear? I couldn't shake the image of her, faceless but present, living in the spaces of our life I couldn't see. The breaking point came one Saturday. He said he had to run into the office for a last-minute project. I nodded, kissed him goodbye, and waited 15 minutes. Then I grabbed my keys and followed. His office is on the north side of town, but he drove south, toward the city. I trailed a few cars behind, heart pounding, palms slick on the steering wheel. He pulled into a hotel parking lot, casual as you please, and walked inside without a glance back. My breath caught. I sat there in my car, staring at the automatic, doors swallowing him whole, and every cell in me screamed to run in and drag him out. But I couldn't move. I just sat frozen, engine humming, the weight of every sacrifice I had ever made pressing down on me. After 20 minutes, he came out again, but not alone. A woman walked beside him, her hair long and dark, her hand brushing his arm like it belonged there. They laughed at something I couldn't hear, and in that moment, my world tilted. I sank lower in my seat, praying he wouldn't notice me. He didn't. They walked to her car, talking easily, and then he leaned down to kiss her cheek. Not passionate. Familiar. Practiced. He watched her drive off, then got into his own car like it was just another errand checked off his list. I drove home before he could see me, my chest hollow, my hands trembling so badly I almost ran a red light. By the time he walked through our front door hours later, smiling like nothing had happened, I had already decided. I couldn't confront him empty-handed. I needed more than suspicions. I needed proof. So when he set his phone down on the counter to wash his hands, I picked it up, heart hammering, and opened his messages. What I saw there was worse than I had imagined. But that's a story for the next part. When I finally unlocked his phone that night, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. He had set it down like always, screen face down on the counter, but his guard slipped when he went upstairs to shower. My heart hammered in my chest as I swiped up and saw the message thread glowing like an open wound. At the top was a name saved only as a single letter, L. My stomach turned. The text scrolled back weeks, months even, late-night messages that made my chest burn. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was perfect. Wish you'd fall asleep faster so you could call. My eyes blurred with tears, but I kept reading, torturing myself. Photos, too. Not explicit, but intimate. Her coffee mug on his desk, a picture of her shoes kicked off under a table, a selfie of them in a car with his arm just barely in the frame. He hadn't even bothered to hide it well. My throat tightened, and I pressed the phone to my chest, trying to steady myself before he came back down. The shower cut off upstairs. Panic surged. I locked the screen and slid it back to exactly where he had left it, my heart racing so loud I thought he might hear it from the stairs. When he came back into the kitchen, hair damp, towel slung over his shoulder, he smiled. "You okay?" "You look pale," I forced a smile. "Just tired." He leaned in to kiss my cheek, and I nearly flinched at the thought of where those lips had been. But I stayed still, quiet, pretending. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the glow of the alarm clock taunting me with every passing minute. I kept replaying those messages, her mug, her shoes, her words. I wanted to scream. I wanted to wake him and shove the phone in his face. But I didn't. Instead, I thought of our daughter down the hall, sleeping peacefully, believing her parents were solid. I thought of the mortgage, the savings account, the life tied together like threads in a web. And I thought of that woman, bold enough to whisper to me in my own bed. By morning, my silence had hardened into something else. Resolve. I started watching him like a detective. I memorized his schedule, noted when he claimed to be at work, when he lingered in the driveway before coming inside. I checked bank statements and saw charges at hotels, restaurants, even gifts I had never received. Once, I noticed a jewelry store charge, but no necklace ever appeared in my jewelry box. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I started planting questions like traps. "Long night?" I'd ask casually. "What restaurant?" He always had an answer, too smooth, too quick. And every time, I nodded as if I believed him, storing the lies like evidence in my mind. The hardest part was pretending in front of our daughter. She'd chatter about school, about her friends, while he sat at the table scrolling through his phone, smiling at texts he tried to angle away from me. She didn't notice, but I did. One evening, she said, "Dad, why are you smiling so much at your phone?" He froze, then laughed. "Just a funny meme from work." My stomach twisted. She believed him. She always believed him. And in that moment, I knew I had to protect her from this. But how do you protect a child from the truth about her father? The breaking point came 2 weeks later. His phone buzzed at midnight again. This time, he grabbed it before I could, but not fast enough. The screen lit up with that single letter L. He stepped into the hallway to answer, whispering too low for me to hear. When he came back, I was sitting up in bed, staring at him. "Who was that?" I asked quietly. He froze, then shrugged. "Work." I tilted my head. "Work doesn't call at midnight." His eyes flickered, his jaw tight. "It happens." I held his gaze for a long moment. "Does she know you're lying to me?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. His face drained of color, and for 1 second, just one, I saw fear in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by anger. "You're paranoid," he snapped. You've always been like this. He turned away, climbed into bed, and pulled the blanket over his shoulder. I lay there, my body rigid, my hands clenched in fists. I didn't argue, not yet. But inside me, something shifted. I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I had proof, and proof meant I had power. The next morning, he acted like nothing happened, cheerfully humming in the kitchen, offering me coffee. I watched him, studying every move, and I realized I was done playing the clueless wife. I wasn't going to scream or beg. I was going to be smart, because if he thought I would crumble, he didn't know me at all. What he didn't realize was that the game had just turned, and I was no longer playing by his rules. Once I decided I wasn't going to play the clueless wife anymore, something in me hardened. I moved through the house like an actress on stage, smiling when he walked in, nodding when he spoke, pretending to be distracted by work or dinner while my mind cataloged everything. Every late night, every unexplained charge, every text that lit up his screen when he thought I wasn't looking, I stored it all away. And slowly I started building a plan. The first step was information. I checked our shared bank account more closely than ever, printing out statements he never bothered to read. The patterns told their own story. Hotel charges, dinners too expensive for one, gifts from stores I'd never received. I even saw cash withdrawals that lined up perfectly with the nights he claimed to be working late. The second step was his phone. I memorized his passcode one night when he slipped, and after that, I didn't have to wait for accidents. I could unlock it while he showered, while he stepped outside for a call, while he mowed the lawn. Each time the texts grew bolder. I miss you. When can we get away again? I can't stop thinking about last night. My hands shook reading them, but I forced myself to stay calm. If I lost it too soon, I'd lose everything. Then came the hardest part, acting normal. At dinner with our daughter, I listened as he joked about school, about sports, about weekend plans, while I stared at the man I thought I'd known for 15 years and saw a stranger. She laughed at his stories, still seeing her dad as the hero. I smiled too, my heart breaking, knowing the truth she didn't. Nights became unbearable. I'd lie awake pretending to sleep while he slipped out of bed to text her. I memorized the rhythm of his thumbs on the glass, the tiny glow against the wall. Sometimes I thought about confronting him right there, but then I remembered what was at stake. Our daughter, our finances, our house. If I exploded too early, he'd twist it, make me look paranoid. No, I needed timing. I needed precision. One Saturday morning, I tested him. I asked, "Mark, do you want to go out tonight, just us? Dinner, maybe?" He hesitated, eyes flickering. "Can't, late project." I nodded slowly. "Of course." Hours later, I checked his location through the family tracking app he'd forgotten I had. He wasn't at the office. He was at the same hotel as before. My chest burned, but I smiled when he called to say, "Don't wait up." Proof. Real, undeniable proof. That night, as he walked through the door past midnight smelling of perfume that wasn't mine, I knew I was close to the breaking point. But I kept playing the role. I kissed his cheek, told him I'd saved dinner, watched him eat reheated pasta without a clue that I knew everything. The next morning, I started step 4, allies. I confided in my sister, the one person I trusted not to spill. Over coffee at her kitchen table, I laid it all out. The call, the receipts, the texts, the hotel. Her eyes widened. "Sarah, you can't keep this in. He's destroying you." I shook my head. "Not yet. I need to be ready. I need to protect myself and our daughter." She nodded slowly, then leaned forward. "Then get everything in writing. Screenshots, bank statements. Don't let him gaslight you when you confront him." It was the first time I felt like I wasn't alone. That night, I started taking photos of everything. The receipts, the texts, even the location tracker. I stored them in a hidden folder, labeled innocuously as tax docs. Each click of the camera felt like reclaiming a piece of my power. Mark, of course, sensed something. He grew sharper, quicker to anger. One night when his phone buzzed and I glanced at it, he snapped, "Why are you always looking at my stuff?" "Don't you trust me?" I met his eyes calmly. "Do I have a reason not to?" He froze, then laughed it off, but the mask slipped. I could see the paranoia building in him too. He knew I was watching, even if he didn't know how much I already knew. Our daughter felt it. One evening, she pushed her plate away and whispered, "Why are you and Dad so weird lately?" My throat tightened. "We're fine, honey. just busy. But her eyes, so much like mine, studied me carefully. She wasn't convinced. That night, after she went to bed, I sat on the couch with Mark and tried to bridge the silence. "Mark, do you ever think about us? About what we've built?" He didn't look at me. "Of course." "Do you ever feel like we're drifting?" He shrugged, eyes on the TV. "People drift. It's normal." My chest tightened. That was his answer. To him, betrayal was normal. Distance was normal. Lies were normal. But not to me. I went to bed that night with one thought. The next time, I won't just watch. I'll act. The pieces were lining up. The proof, the timing, the suspicion already gnawing at him. Soon, I'd have the moment I needed. And when it came, I wouldn't whisper. I would make sure the truth was loud enough for everyone to hear. The night everything finally came crashing down started like any other. Mark claimed he had a late meeting, grabbed his keys, and kissed my cheek too quickly before rushing out. I waited 10 minutes, then opened the tracking app on my phone. There it was again. Same hotel, same pattern. My pulse raced, but this time I didn't just sit at home waiting. I grabbed my phone, my folder of proof, and I drove. The parking lot was half empty, the neon sign flickering, casting an eerie glow across the pavement. I sat there in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, until I saw him walk out. He wasn't alone. The woman was with him, tall, with dark hair, laughing at something he whispered. They walked side by side like it was natural, like they had done it 100 times before. My stomach twisted, but I didn't cry. Not this time. I got out of the car, my heels clicking on the pavement, and called his name. He froze. The woman froze too, her laughter dying instantly. "Sarah?" he said, his voice sharp, panicked. "What are you doing here?" I held up my phone, the screen glowing with the dozens of screenshots, receipts, and messages I had collected. "I think the better question is, what are you doing here?" His face drained of color. The woman shifted uncomfortably, muttered something under her breath, and walked quickly to her car. She didn't even look back at him. For the first time, he looked small. Not powerful, not confident, just small. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered, the classic line, but the words sounded hollow. I let out a bitter laugh. "It's exactly what it looks like, Mark. The receipts, the hotel bills, the texts at midnight. The woman who whispered to me in my own bed. Do you really think I didn't know?" He opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. "Our daughter thinks you're a hero. She looks at you like you can do no wrong. And this is who you are? A man sneaking around in hotel parking lots, lying to his family?" His shoulders sagged, his mask slipping away. "I never meant for it to go this far," he whispered. "I still love you." I shook my head. "No, you love yourself. You love the thrill. You love having someone stroke your ego while I held everything else together at home. But me, you stopped loving me the moment you decided lies were easier than truth." For a long moment, silence stretched between us, broken only by the hum of passing cars. He tried to reach for my hand, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said firmly. "You don't get to touch me like nothing happened." His eyes filled with panic. "What are you going to do?" I met his gaze, steady now, stronger than I'd felt in months. "I'm going to take back my life. I'm going to protect our daughter. And I'm going to make sure you don't get to lie your way out of this." He looked stunned, as if the woman he thought he could control had just vanished in front of him. Maybe she had. I turned, walked back to my car, and left him standing there in the parking lot under that flickering neon light. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the folder of evidence, thinking about what came next. Divorce papers, custody, conversations I dreaded but knew I had to have. When the sun came up, I heard our daughter's footsteps in the hallway. She padded into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. "Mom, why are you up so early?" she asked. I forced a smile. "Just thinking." She sat across from me, her face open, innocent. "Is Dad home?" My throat tightened. "Not right now," I said softly. She frowned but didn't press. In that moment, I realized she was the reason I couldn't fall apart. I had to be steady, even if inside I was shattered. Later that day, when Mark finally walked in, he tried to act normal, but I didn't play along. I handed him the folder, thick with every piece of proof. "This isn't just between us anymore," I said quietly. "This is about the life we built, the family we promised, and the lies you chose. I won't let you destroy me, and I won't let you destroy her." His jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. Maybe for once he knew there was nothing left to say. That night, I packed a bag. Not because I was running, but because I was done waiting. Done letting his lies dictate my silence. As I zipped it shut, I thought back to that first phone call at midnight, the whisper that had shattered everything. At the time, I thought it was the worst moment of my life. But now, standing in my own truth, I realized it was also the beginning of something else. My freedom. Sometimes betrayal doesn't break you. Sometimes it forces you to find a strength you didn't know you had. And as I closed the door behind me, I knew one thing for certain. His lies had ended, but my story was just beginning.